Hey folks, greetings from the Offensive Security Group here at Secure IT 360, coming at you with another episode of the Cyber Threat Perspective. Today we have Tyler Roberts, who's hasn't been on the podcast in like a few episodes, man. Like
I've been
where
on
you
a
been?
hiatus for like 2 months. It's been a while. Been a while.
Yeah, well, you've been carrying the slack because I certainly haven't been doing as much internals as you have, as you've kind of been getting up to speed and stuff. So I feel like I've been carrying the weight of the podcast. You've been carrying the weight of the internals. So I think it's a
Stab
good
and
take.
flow. Stab and flow.
So, as the title suggests, this is PingCastle for Defenders. So, Tyler and I wanted to do kind of a tool time episode where we talk about one of the tools that we like and one of the tools that we use. And this one in particular is a tool that we use on internal pen tests. And I'll give a brief overview. For a lot of folks listening, you probably already know what PingCastle is, what it's used for, but we'll cover just kind of like a brief overview of what it is. And then I'm going to share my screen and we're going to talk through kind of like the features that we like, some of the use cases that we use PingCastle for, and some of the cool stuff that you can find, and just kind of highlight this tool all as a whole. So that's the plan for this episode. So stick around to the end because we're going to talk about some of like the hidden features, if you will, of PingCastle. I say hidden, it's on their documentation page, but I think for casual users maybe of PingCastle or people who haven't spent as much time with it as we have, there's some hidden Easter egg tools or capabilities within the tool that I want to call out towards the end of the episode. All right, so PingCastle. PingCastle is an Active Directory health assessment tool, but that doesn't do it justice, really. Like PingCastle has now, I think, something like 170 or 180 rules built into it at current time. This is September 2025. And it has rules to cover everything from passwords and group policy preferences to misconfigured logon scripts to dangerous delegated rights and certificate templates and a whole bunch of stuff that we're going to kind of dig into and cover. But essentially, it's an Active Directory vulnerability / misconfiguration auditing discovery tool with a little bit of health check in there too, because it can find things like when you haven't rotated the KRB TGT password in a long time, or if the recycle bin is disabled. So I describe it as like the Active Directory health assessment tool, auditing tool, etc. And like I said, it's one of our favorite internal pen test tools. It's open source. It's got a non-profit open source license. So you actually go look at the code. You can download it yourself, play around with it, which is really neat. And from like a quick history lesson real quick, and then I'll turn it over to Tyler, is it was created by Vincent Leteau, and I forget when this was created, so I apologize, Vincent, but this has been around for a while. This tool has been around for quite a while. It's been improved over time. It was, some other key things to know are that it was sold to Netrix in 2024. So it's now a property of Netrix, so it's in their suite of tools. They are still supporting the free community edition. So if you use it to audit your environment, for example, you can download and use this tool for free still. And they have commercial versions as well. If you're like an auditor or you're like a firm like us and you want to use it for auditing purposes, there are commercial versions. So with that brief introduction, Tyler, I want to get your initial thoughts as somebody who, didn't come from the sysadmin world, but you're now using a tool like this for internal pen testing. Give us your kind of thoughts on PingCastle, what you like about it, and kind of just overall like sentiment of PingCastle.
For attackers, it gives you a wide overview of the environment as a whole and kind of gives you the first scoring that you could give an environment just based off the levels of vulnerabilities, quote unquote, that it finds and the misconfigurations that you see. You can kind of get a snapshot into how the pen test is going to go. It's very comprehensive in the fact that it'll enumerate user groups. You can look at your sensitive users. You can look at the settings applied to those accounts, active, enabled, disabled, sensitive flags set for accounts, certificate templates, their misconfigurations, if any. Like, it's very comprehensive because it doesn't just show you users, it also shows you associated settings. It doesn't just show you certificate templates, it shows you associated settings. So you can audit a lot of stuff in a short amount of time because it snapshots everything and puts it in a very nice report.
Yeah, definitely. And the report, which I'll bring up in a minute, I want to show the rules. I'm going to show the rules file so everybody can see that. I'm going to show an example report, and then we're going to talk about kind of some of the hidden features at the end. But on that note, with the report is really nice because it's broken down in different sections. They give you a risk score or a rating so that you can kind of track that over time. So you can show your IT leadership or security leadership, be like, hey, we're a C right now or a D. And, 2 years from now, when you kind of are getting to the point where you've cleaned up a lot of the stuff, maybe you're an A or a B or something, right? So you can show the improvement over time, which is a really big factor in this, right? To continue to get support, continue to get resources. It's really important to show progress in what you're doing and show that the investments are paying off, right? So it allows you to do that, which is really nice. And I find, just personally, and I might be biased because I've been using PingCastle for a while now, is that I find PingCastle's report a lot easier to read than most other tools that are similar to this. So I just find it easier to read. I find it more intuitive to kind of go through the report as a whole. Just me personally, very anecdotal, but it is.
Well, I think the design of the report was very intentional, because if there's a finding at the beginning of the report, there will be a link to reference the user, the group, the template that rule popped for, so you can go immediately view the actual results and dig into the meat of it. The other thing I like about PingCastle, though, is I don't think there's an organization size or maturity that wouldn't benefit from running the tool, because as much as it'll audit misconfigurations, it'll also look at your hygiene items too. So even if you're doing everything right, you don't have a lot of misconfigurations, you may have a few hygiene items related in the report that you can still go shore up and get even more value out of it that way.
Yeah, that's a super great point. So quick little sidebar detour, just a quick admin. So this PingCastle tool is part of what we do on an internal pen test. So part of what we do on an internal pen test is evaluate Active Directory and all the components associated with it. And so this is part of our comprehensive Active Directory kind of evaluation that we do for our internal pen test. So if what we're showing you guys is interesting, if you're thinking about going the route of getting an internal pen test, I put together a short video that kind of outlines how our internal pen test process works, what to expect, kind of like how we do things. So I put together a short video for folks who want to get some more information about what we do and how we do internal pen testing specifically. So you can go to offsec.blog/IPT. So it's offsec.blog/IPT. And on that website, there's like a short video that shows you what we do, how we do it in terms of internal pen testing. And then if it seems like it might be a fit, you can book a call with us and we can talk more about what you might need for pen testing, if we're able to help you, if how we do things is a fit for you. And we would love to have a chat with you and see if we might be able to help you guys. So go to offsec.blog/IPT, check out that short video. And if it makes sense, book a call with us. And we would love the opportunity to maybe help you guys with your security. All right, so I'm going to share my screen now. Cool beans. So for those listening on the podcast, if you go over to our YouTube channel, it's youtube.com/cyberthreatpov, I believe it is. There'll be links in the show notes and obviously and stuff like that. So if you're listening, go over to YouTube if you want to check out kind of like what we're looking at and kind of talking about on the screen. So the first thing I want to point out is the rules file. So PingCastle maintains a list of rules that it has for its current version. This says 2024, but I'm pretty sure this is relatively up to date. And I just wanted to scroll through a couple sections real quick, just for people that haven't seen this before, get a sense of how robust this actually is and what it checks for. So inactive users, it looks for, inactive user objects and things related to that. Object configuration are things like, hidden group membership, where reversible passwords are used. And I'm just going to scroll through, and you can see this, maybe the scroll bar on the right. There are dozens and dozens of rules that are looking for all sorts of vulnerabilities, misconfigurations, access control list or permission delegation issues, admin control paths. It's like if domain users has control over like the domain root or full control rather. So tons of stuff here in this rule file. So this is just the example health check rules, which I thought was pretty neat. Tons of stuff here. Certificate takeovers, certificate abuse, past the credential are things like, checking for the presence of protected user groups. Like that's a hygiene thing / security thing that Tyler mentioned is, if you don't have administrators in the protected users group, this will flag all the accounts that are not members of that group. Print spooler service, it's something we see all the time and we abuse quite regularly. Passwords and group policies, and you can just see like there are tons and tons of stuff in here. Lots and lots of rules. So now I'm going to bring up a example report. And Tyler, if you want to just maybe go through like your kind of your perspective on the health check specifically. So what does the health check do from the PingCastle? So like when you fire up PingCastle, you just run a health check. What does that kind of do? And what is like the high level information that you get from it? And then from there, maybe we'll dig into a couple of our like favorite sections and kind of what it tells us and what abuses maybe are possible from there.
Yeah, when you execute the tool, the health check maybe takes, I don't know, an average 5-10 minutes. It's going to send out a bunch of LDAP queries for enumeration to get all the different AD objects, users, and it's going to check all the accounts that it finds for insecure settings, misconfigurations. And then you're going to have your indicators page here for your different types of findings from PingCastle. So based on the amount of rules that PingCastle matches to stale objects, privileges accounts, anomalies, and trusts, you'll get a rating. So if you match 8 rules, you may have a 70 on stale objects. It depends on the rule and the severity of the misconfiguration. The indicators view to me is not that helpful. I think that would be better for blue teamers. What I'm most interested in is the levels. So once you go, you can see your maturity level, and then based off the type of weakness misconfiguration found between critical and your most hygiene items, they'll be categorized. So you can see your most pressing findings, the one that PingCastle is going to recommend you shore up first, or the ones that present the most risk. And then as you drop levels, the findings will present less and less risk and be more hygiene related.
Yep, definitely. And full transparency, I believe the maturity levels are part of like their standard commercial like offering. So like this maturity level thing is part of their premium paid, like their first tier. It's like their auditor tier, standard tier, I think it is. So keep that in mind. That being said, all of the findings that are in level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, all are identified with the free tool. So all of the issues that are found with the commercial version can be found with the free version. So there's no difference there. The only difference with the premium one is you get some like maturity score rating things. You get some additional diagrams for like laps and things like that. There's probably some other features that I'm forgetting. But the point I wanted to make is even if you use the free version, you will still be able to find all of these issues. They're just going to be categorized in sections like this. So it'll say stale objects, it'll say privileged accounts, trusts, et cetera, anomalies. You just won't get the maturity score with the free version that you can download offline. Cool. So obviously, for people who are kind of paying attention, looking, kind of reading ahead, if you will, there are some pretty severe findings that this sample report has found. And that leads me to the first one that I wanted to talk about, which is group policy preferences and GPP passwords. So PingCastle can find when a password is being used in group policy, in the case of like group policy preferences. So for those inquiring minds, or just to go a little bit nerdy on you, the passwords in group policy preferences are encrypted. But unfortunately, at some point, way back when, I don't know when, 2015, I don't know, maybe soon, around then. Anyways, the decryption key was leaked online, and so that is a known encryption key. So now, anytime you see an obfuscated password or encrypted password in group policy preferences, it's able to be decrypted. So this is most of the time when we see this, it's when an organization is using this to set a local admin account and a local admin password. So let's say you want to, configure a local admin account on all your workstations. You could use group policy preferences to set that password, right? And you could, create a new admin account, set the password for it. And then the password would be set in group policy itself. And this is something we see quite regularly. Sometimes it's old and the password isn't valid anymore. But we do see this quite regularly. Would you say, Tyler?
Yeah, I think I've seen it on my past 3 engagements, actually.
Really? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep.
In my experience, though, a lot of organizations don't, if they do have GPP passwords, they're not in use any longer. They're older configurations that have just been left. But once again, it's a hygiene item because something we see, even if the passwords aren't in use, we can get a mind's eye into your organization and how you guys set passwords, kind of the format in which you set them, the characters that you like to use, which is extremely valuable for us.
Yeah. And something to note is you can't even configure this anymore unless your domain functional level is 2008 or 2008 R2, something like that. So unless your domain functional level is that old, you can't even misconfigure this anymore. It just doesn't let you, which is great. It's great. The other thing I wanted to point out is something that is near and dear to me. Let's see. Oh, and of course, the sample report doesn't have any have any information on it. Let's see. Yeah, we'll go with this. So PingCastle can also find. It also identifies the logon scripts, and it can identify when there are some misconfigurations with logon scripts. So some of the ones that I see most commonly are when a group policy is deploying a logon script that's modifiable, or a logon script that itself has insecure permissions, right? So if I'm able to modify that logon script itself, PingCastle can find that. And then there's a number of other issues as well that it can find related to logon scripts. Let's see if I can go to the summary section. Yeah, so here's an example. Number of logon scripts that can be modified by any user. So this is saying that a logon script can be modified by authenticated users. So I created a tool called Script Sentry. That's not it. Text spends script set. I can type. So this was part of the reason why I created Script Sentry was I realized that PingCastle could find some of the issues related to logon scripts, but not all of them. So I created a tool called Script Sentry to find all the other kind of edge cases that could go possibly wrong with logon scripts. And some of them are quite interesting. For example, when you have admins who have logon scripts that are mapped to non-existent shares, this presents an opportunity to actually steal these admin credentials, quite interestingly. But anyways,
I think that's a good note, though.
Yeah.
That PingCastle is not a one-all, be-all silver bullet tool.
Yep.
And there's other tools that exist that can do similar functionality and may provide more results. I think the benefit here is the readability and usability of the report and how easy it is to get PingCastle spun up. It is extremely easy to use and get this report format, but some things like Active Directory certificate services, PingCastle is not going to identify every single misconfiguration. There's other tools that can find more. But if you do have immediately vulnerable certificate templates that are abusable for, domain admin privask, this can identify those.
Yep. Cool. You want to talk about the ADCS stuff then? That's a good segue.
Yeah, we can go to that.
So tell us, Tyler, from your experience, misconfigured certificate services and what PingCastle can find and what you notice on internals related to that.
Yeah, so PingCastle is going to find what we consider ESC1 templates, which are your most severe, most insecure. And that's when the certificate's used for authentication. Anyone can enroll, and you can also specify a alternate subject, alternate name. When you can specify that SAN, you can specify that SAN for a domain admin, and then it's used for authentication. You'll get that hash back for that template. You'll get a hash. Or do you get a .pem, don't you?
Yep.
As a result of that, which you can convert to a .pfx and then pass that for that user to authenticate as them. So that template type is extremely vulnerable because you use two tools, Certify, Rubius to pass it, and then your domain admin at the end of the day. So that can be a day one thing. If you run PingCastle, find it. That's a very, very easy prevest for us.
Yep.
And this will help identify those. So immediately, abusable certificate templates PingCastle can find. But some of your other ones that certain groups or users have control over, modified rights, generic all, that they can change the permissions or of that template. PingCastle is not as good at identifying those. So a little bit of caveat there.
Yep. And one other thing I'll point out. So in its current form, based on what I understand, PingCastle can find 5 out of the, what is there, like 15 or 18 now different ADCS issues. I forget how many there are now. There's even one called Uwu. A little nod to whatever.
The ESC15 Uwu.
Yeah. I forget his name. Justin from Trusted Sec. I forget his last name. Apologies for that. So anyways, PingCastle can have 5 ADCS issues. The first one, like you said, is ESC1, which is where you can essentially impersonate a user by using certificate templates or by using a vulnerable template. So you can impersonate a domain admin. The next one is ESC2 and ESC3. ESC2 is pretty much kind of similar to ESC1. That's what's called an any purpose certificate template. That's the one shown here, the third line down. There are agent certificate templates, and you can kind of use those in combination with other certificate templates to, again, elevate privileges. And then ESC4 is one where the certificate template permissions itself are misconfigured. So, for example, maybe you have like a web server certificate template and only, admins are allowed to use that one based on the enrollment rights. Well, if domain users can just modify all the properties or the settings on that template, you can, as a domain user, or as an attacker, modify the settings on that template to turn it into like an ESC1 and then, use it to impersonate a domain admin. So it can find 5. The other one I didn't mention was ESC8, which is a relaying attack. We won't go into too much detail on that for this call or for this podcast. I was going to say webinar because I'm like thinking about webinars, and then I'm like, I'm naturally like on a call with a client talking about this stuff. So I said call. So like apologies for the brain stuff. But anyways, the last thing I want to point out about that, which is really important for pen testers and IT people, security people, is that this will only find issues related to published templates, meaning templates that can be actually used. So that brings us to the next point, Tyler. If you want to talk about Locksmith and how it kind of differs, just briefly, just for context for everyone.
Yeah, Locksmith is your full ADCS audit. So your ESC 1 through your ESC, I think 18, will be completely audited by Locksmith. That will find any vulnerable certificate template published or unpublished. And that's helpful because even if you have an unpublished certificate template, it's still nice to know, hey, if this does get put in use in the future, this is a direct domain admin prevesc. So either we delete this or we change settings on it to make sure that it doesn't get put in use. But it is a complete ADCS audit of every template type and all templates that are on your ADCS server. Yep.
Yeah, and lastly, PingCastle has like a nice certificate template viewer here where you can see all the parameters, if I scroll up here, related to it. So you can see which ones have enrollee can supply subject. You can see issuance requirements, vulnerable ACL, everyone can enroll. So it's really nice. It's really nice for finding low-hanging fruit certificate templates that are published. But like you said, Locksmith is the GOAT of ADCS auditing. And I don't just say that because I'm friends with Jake and I'm biased and I helped contribute some code to it. And I'm an emotional support coder for the Locksmith team. But it truly is like one of the best ADCS auditing tools for IT admins. Because who wants to run Python-based tools? Like, come on.
PowerShell is the way. PowerShell is the way.
That is not a knock to Certify, by the way. Certify is another tool that pen testers commonly use. Super, super awesome tool. All right.
I think it's nice to look at the delegations as well.
Yeah, so let's jump over to... So that's a good point. What you'll see is, let's go to the summary, and we'll find an issue here. Unknown account delegation, presence word. Yeah. So this is kind of what you'll see is in PingCastle, you'll see this rule. This is presence of a delegation where anybody can act. Now, what it's looking for are two groups, the everyone group and the authenticated users group. And what it's looking for is when it says where anyone can act, it means some sort of unsafe permission. So it might be full control or generic all. That might be right property. It might be right DACL, right owner, as it says here. So there are a certain amount of quote unquote unsafe permissions that, you know, low privilege users should not have, and PingCastle can find those. So it's got a nice delegation section here. So Tyler, I don't know if you want to talk through this a little bit more onto like what you see and in how you kind of use this to find these misconfigured permissions.
Yeah, I use this more so with the templates to see if there's any vulnerable templates that can be overwritten, but it is, you read it, account right, and then distinguish name, correct? So everyone has generic all, generic right DACL over test.
Exactly.
So you can do a quick snapshot into what accounts have specific rights over specific distinguished names, whatever those are.
Yeah, and I find the search field to be super helpful, right? So like if you're looking for everyone, you can see everywhere where everyone shows up. If you want to look for everywhere where right DACL shows up, you can see all this. So this is super, super duper handy. Again, just pointing out that this is not going to find everything. There are edge cases, there are nuances. You know, this rule in particular that I just showed is just looking for everyone and authenticated users. You might have, you know, like a group called financial aid, right? Which isn't going to show up here because it's not in this report. But you might have a group called financial aid that has all your financial aid users in it, and they have some inherent permissions or elevated permissions, right? Or it might be, you know, help desk has the ability to, has full control over a security group or an OU with domain admins in it, right? And now help desk can reset domain admin passwords. So lots of interesting stuff that you can find from this. And it's literally just a search box away, you know, after you run the tool. So really amazing. The next thing I want to talk about was control paths. So you can think of this like Bloodhound's attack paths. You can think about this in kind of that way. And it's kind of uses similar functionality and similar mapping techniques that I'll show in a second. So this one section has probably provided some of the most value I've ever gotten on an internal pen test because of the things that it's found for me. So the cool thing is, well, I'll talk about control paths. So control paths, like I said, they're like attack paths. They're where some resource or account or user, some object in Active Directory has some sort of privileges or rights on another resource. So as an example, domain users maybe has full control of the domain controller's OU. That's what this section is designed to identify. And then to take it one step further, there is kind of a diagram or a chart that will show you I could scroll to the right. Let me just find a better object here. Well, we'll use certificate publishers here. So it gives you a map as well to show you kind of how this misconfiguration presents itself. So it's showing here, certificate publishers is the group here. And it's showing that there's indirect control for 3 accounts or 3 identities, principals, including the everyone group. So if you click details, it will show you that authenticated users through this path has some sort of control, hence the control path, over cert publishers. So I know that I have to check that out and investigate it. And what's cool is if you scroll over to the right, there's this analysis button. This analysis button brings up this really handy diagram. It's very similar to what you might see in Bloodhound, right? It has the group name or the username, has a group policy name, whatever the object is, gives it a name and the type. And then for each of the edges, it will show what the permission is. Very similar to Bloodhound, right? So we'll walk through this real quick for people to see. So authenticated users has generic write all, gen write all, which is full control over this group policy. So, okay, cool. Authenticated users can modify anything in this group policy. This group policy is contained in this group policy directory. So this is where the group policy lives. And then it's saying that this group policy is linked to the default domain controller's policy. So to summarize that real briefly, authenticated users can modify a group policy that's linked to the default domain controller's policy. And there is a computer called win blah, 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 a domain controller, presumably, where that group policy is linked. And that domain controller is a member of cert publishers. So presumably this is like a domain controller that is also being used as a CA server, right? A certificate authority. So to summarize this as a whole, authenticated users can modify a group policy that's linked to the domain controller's default domain controller's policy, which contains a domain controller / CA server. So in TLDR terms, authenticated users can own this domain controller, right? Using the group policy. So what might you do? What might a threat actor do? Well, they could create a scheduled task that would run on the domain controller and, run their malware, run their C2, use the pivot, Privesc, whatever the case may be. But that's just one way that we see that in the wild is firing up a scheduled task that runs on the domain controller. Bada bing, bada boom, And it was literally as simple as running a health check report, going to the control path section, recognizing that there is an inherent control here, if I can get down to it, and then, reading it essentially. So thoughts on that, Tyler? Anything else to add on that?
I think you did a great job. I'm just realizing as you're scrolling through every section of the report that includes the word control, how much is in this report. Like, it is a lot of information.
Yeah. It can be overwhelming, especially if you're not familiar with a lot of this stuff. You're like, oh my goodness, like, what do I focus on? I got this huge report. Like, what do I focus on? That will probably have to be the topic of another episode, maybe, of like, how do we prioritize a PingCastle report? Write that down, because that would be good. So, like Tyler said, there's a lot in a PingCastle report. There's just a lot there, and there's a lot to cover. Those are some of the quick highlights. There's a lot more there from an abuse standpoint, an attack standpoint that we could cover. But we're 34 minutes in, and I want to make sure that this is to the point and doesn't get too long. So the last thing is the scanner. This is the hidden feature that almost no one knows about when it comes to PingCastle. This is a feature that I don't think any other tool has. I haven't seen any other tool incorporate this type of functionality within it. And it's super secret. It's a hidden Easter egg. And if you use it, and if you've never heard about this before, if you ever use this or you tell someone about it, make sure that I'm the one that told you about it. Just kidding. So Tyler, talk us through the scanner and some of like the highlights to it. Like, what are the things that we use that you think are important or helpful or useful, and like what it does?
Yeah, one of the most powerful features of the scanner is, say that you have 800 different devices in your domain and you're scared that there's maybe 20 end user devices, critical servers that may lack proper AV or EDR. The scanner can do an AV EDR scan based off the EDR that you have running. You can specify the service name. You can specify your AVs that you're running via service name, and then it will go out and it'll audit all of the devices that it can talk to, which is majority of the devices in your domain. And then it will spit out a report of the running AV EDR on every workstation and server that it connected to.
Yeah.
And that is super powerful, because if you're scared that you're missing anything or lacking protections anywhere, which is something we check for, because those are always high value targets, high value boxes, because without EDR, we can run a slew of tools because there's no proper protections in place. So those are very high value targets, and you can get them in a very digestible format in that report.
Yeah, I mean, I can't count. I mean, there's been so many times where we have run the AV EDR scan on PingCastle, identified a host that doesn't have EDR, pivot to that EDR, and then we run Mimikatz, we run Rubius, certify all of our like malicious tool set that would normally take, a very good AMZ bypass or some other EDR bypass. It would take a lot to get those running to bypass, modern EDR nowadays. We just run all of that from a host that doesn't have EDR. And without a doubt, one of the most high value kind of techniques that we use on our internal pen tests. The other thing is local admin. So this isn't as good. I think there's some protections that were turned on by default, I think, in either like later versions of Windows 10 or Windows 11. And I think this requires remote registry to be enabled, possibly. So I don't know if you found this too, Tyler, that the local admin scanner isn't as good more recently because of those settings that I think are on by default with Windows. I think it has to do with like the remote registry, if I remember right.
It's a little bit weaker, yeah.
But nonetheless, there are still hosts that we can identify that might be either reusing local admin accounts. So for example, if the organization is not using LAPS, we might be able to identify hosts that we could pivot to by looking at the local admin account. And particularly if we're able to get the local admin password right off the host that we're currently on, for example. And then the other two are scanning for spooler service. And that's pretty simple. There's a PowerShell command you can run to check the spooler service. But this just automates it. And it's a convenient way to really retest or just verify if the spooler service is running, particularly on domain controllers. And then the last one is the share scan. And that's kind of the screenshot that you see on the screen right now. Is you can there's a file share scanning functionality built into PingCastle so that you can enumerate all the hosts in the machine, find all of the shares, including like C dollar shares, admin dollar shares that your current user has access to or where everyone is allowed access to. And one of the cool things about this, Tyler, for me, is that this is very fast. Like if we were to do the same thing with raw PowerShell, this takes a long time. So this is quick. It's very convenient. It's all bundled into one. And then the last secret feature before we run out of time is that you can configure PingCastle to use a specific protocol. So normally, you might be thinking, oh, it uses LDAP to query the domain, right? You would be probably right in most cases. However, with PingCastle, you can have it use ADWS in favor of LDAP, or you can have it use ADWS and then fall back to LDAP if it can't use ADWS. And AD is Active Directory Web Service. It's just a different way to enumerate and query Active Directory. This is how, if you're familiar with like SOPOUND, that's how SOPOUND works, is it's not using LDAP queries, it's using ADWS. So what that means is if we know that the customer is using some sort of like LDAP monitoring, or they're doing some detections on that, we might be able to skirt by using ADWS only, as opposed to just raw LDAP, if the detections are only built for LDAP, right? So that's kind of an interesting little tidbit for you. Cool. Anything else before we get too long in this episode that we want to talk about related to PingCastle?
I don't think so. I think if you're not already using PingCastle, you've never seen a PingCastle report, you might as well run it in your environment just to see what's up, because it is super, super functional, super quick to run, and it'll give you work that you can work on for a long time because of how many rules that can be matched just based off what they have.
Yeah. Cool. And I should have said this up front, like at the beginning of the episode, but we are not paid to say this. We don't get paid by Netrix to, like promote PingCastle or anything like that. We are actually paying customers of the PingCastle, like the auditor tier or whatever. We just really love it. I really love it. I think it's awesome. I think everybody should use it. There are a number of awesome tools like this that can do similar things. Purple Knight is another one that people often put into the same conversation as PingCastle because it's free for the community to use, and it also has a ton of rules, and it finds a lot of the same misconfigurations that PingCastle does. So Purple Knight, shout out to Semperis for that tool. It's super, super awesome as well. So yeah, that's our episode. We'll end on that. Once again, if you're in the market for a super awesome pen test from Tyler or I, if you're interested in seeing how we do things for internal pen testing, go to offsec.blog/IPT, and you can watch a short video and kind of get a sense of how we do things there. And if it makes sense, book a call with us, and we'll see if we might be able to help. And with that, you can check us out on secureIT360.com. Offsec.blog is where we put all our content, and we will see you in the next episode.